those of you who have not heard about Leela, Leela is actually a child of Kalakshetra. She studied here from the time she was a young girl in the hostel, and she actually stayed and studied dance here with the teachers of this great institution. And she has one of those unique perspectives of being both a child of Kalakshetra as well as having been out there in the wider world. She's being honored by the country. She's Padma Shri Leela Sampson, and she has also really spoken for the arts, and in her new role as the director of Kalakshetra, her own album educator, she has been a real inspiration to the young people who work here, and has brought forth this very difficult dance that they do every day, and to bring it forward in the spirit of creativity and happiness to the into everyday life. And so there's no better person than her to speak on dance as sadhana. We are delighted to welcome her here as a dancer and as her own unique person. Thanks, Akka.
Seen all of you in the last 3.5 days, and we've sort of all become a little more familiar with each other's profiles and places, at least, if not names. Talking about a difficult art form, an art form that has such a wonderful past, is both easy and difficult. I don't want to make this a very complex session, and in fact, if you were few people, I would love to have had you all get up and just try it. If there are any among you who want to do that, yes, so then we'll try that, because one of the only ways of actually experiencing, a potter's, what he feels with his hands, is to actually put your hands where his hands are. So in a sense, it would be wonderful if you could, or even if you felt like at least doing one of your mudras maybe, but basically to experience what the dancer, and the Bharatanatyam dancer in particular today, that's my session, feels, and what makes that person tick, and what makes that person explore both the form but also ultimately, and that was my guru's, and I think my personal dictum as well, is that you ultimately have to go within yourself. And when you go within yourself with your own particular sense of aesthetic, your own particular sense of ultimately philosophy, I don't want to use the word spirituality because that's too big a word for me, but philosophy I would use comfortably. And you have to explore your inner self. It's difficult to be able to say that as a dancer, because dance is so visual and it's so much of the body. But that's what makes it so hard. This body becomes my pen, my instrument. I can't hide behind anything else. As a writer, even as a singer, I can get into a studio and say, I don't want to see this larger world. I'm giving you my voice, and it's got my soul in it, and that's it, but you don't see mine. But in dance, it's not about that. It's about actually, even for someone like me who was a very shy child, I think, to actually just pick up your chin and look at the other. That itself is a very tough thing to do, because it's you and you're online. Your body is there to be critiqued by the teacher, to be pointed at, and all of us know that when almost any other thing, if you did something wrong and somebody pointed it out, it wouldn't be quite as harsh as when somebody says, push that shoulder back. Because that is so personal, it's so much you. So if my shoulder tends to slouch and I have to push it back, then that's a it's a big personal thing, and it's who it's coming from, and it's how they put it. So it all becomes it's very tough, but you learn to give up your ego very early in the learning process, and the reason is that you trust your guru so much that they become, so much. It's like you looking at yourself. You trust the teacher to look at you with the way you will look at yourself. And ultimately, you take over that I, and you look at yourself while you're doing it for an audience. So let's just get to some of the basics of this style. You do know that the style was nurtured in the temples of South India, and when I say that, I really mean nurtured because all the impetus for the dance came from these temples. The rituals and the processes of the temple were very much, the dancer was very much part of that process. And we're not talking about it in a romantic way, we're talking about it in a very real way. The dancer, the Natpati, the Devadasi, as she was known, servant of the god, was somebody who was part of the rituals of that temple, and she had in fact prerogative at a very good time of this process, of this system, if you like. She had a prerogative over the head priest even. She had moments with the deity alone where she would either sing to him or dance for him, put him to sleep or wake him up. And there were these processes where there was this one-to-one communication with the deity. But that is no more in practice. What we now have is that we've moved into institutions like this one, we've moved into the Guru Shishya format in homes, we've moved into the large dance companies and things like that, where this connect with that system is now gone. This puts actually a larger pressure on us because, especially in an institute like this, where that was given so much importance, not for the physicality of it, but because of for the spirit of it. The spirit of it, dancing in a temple, even now when we go and have the opportunity to dance in a temple, it puts a very big responsibility on you to throw away some of the paraphernalia that you normally carry to a proscenium stage. And that's a wonderful thing. And in a sense, even dancing here in these rooms, in this institute, you stay within the parameters of that sanctity because it is so, it has no paraphernalia that you can hang on to. But on stage you have lights and you have curtains and there's loud music and there's musicians and it's all very heady. And then of course you have this audience waiting to see you dance. So what I'm just trying to point out to is the devotional aspect of the dance, which is intrinsic to India, intrinsic to India's dance forms, and that is something that one has to keep at least at the back of one's mind, even if you want to be that star performer and you say, I have no need for all this connect with the temple or the deities or the gods even. I just want to dance. There are young people who talk to us, and that's fine. I think they have because of their, perhaps you could put it down to their lack of exposure, lack of education in particular, dimensions of India's culture, they would speak like that rather bluntly. But it doesn't help to be like that because on the longer journey, when you're not so pretty and you're not so glamorous anymore, then there's something else that the body and the mind and the soul need. And that's why there are so many hundreds of dancers that get trained, but not very many that stay in the field. The other wonderful thing about India is that we have so many. I mean, dance does come from the earth, as it were. We have folk forms, we have crafts, we have dance forms that emanate from everywhere. Every village has its own little particular kind of expression, not only in the way they move together as an expression of solidarity and an expression of bonding, but also in what they wear, what they use in their, what they would ornament themselves with or not ornament themselves with. It's so typical of that particular village and what they craft out of their own hands. So that the dance and the music and the singing and the whoever's beating the drums, everything is part of a very cohesive, very comfortable cocoon of experience that is special to that village. So from those forms, and we take great sustenance in the classical forms from those forms. Any classical dancer who says you have nothing to do with folk form, nothing to do with the crafts of India, absolutely, it's like almost denying where you got your real nourishment from. My nourishment did come from these forms. Then we also have, all the street forms, the street drama forms, and the semi-classical forms, and the traveling yatra groups, and then we have the dance drama forms like in Kerala and Yक्षगान, Manipur, all these places where a male group at one time would exclusively travel, take all female roles, and perform the wonderful stories of the Puranas and the epics. But of course, the classical forms did come into existence over time. They have become now, I think, very refined, very, I think they've become very distilled. And while, many countries in the world mourn the passing of the classical form, we have to stand up and say that luckily it still exists, not just in one form but in several forms, and we have almost 6 or 7 classical dance forms, each absolutely rich in its own, in its identity, in its a literary world that backs each one of those forms. It's not just, it's not just the physical form, but as I said again, Odissi, if you take Odissi, has the saris that are woven in Orissa, the jewelry that is made in Orissa, its decorations on stage would be from that area, but the lyrics, the religious impetus of the people, everything is expressed in that particular form. So we're talking about forms that have some common, yes, we all have common Hindu philosophy, we all have common mythological base from which we take and all that, but yet when you have an Odissi dancer and a Bharatanatyam dancer stand next to each other, they almost can't do anything together because it is so different. And that's, many of our foreign guests would notice that something about us, we have a lot in common, but we are also very, very different, even if we come from a different part of India. And that's what we celebrate, because that's what's so beautiful about these forms. Having said that, I'd like to say that over the last, let's say 30 years, that my career span, and that many of us dancers of our generation who learned from the great gurus, we had the opportunity to actually interact with the great gurus, have moved on into a dialogue, into a situation of dialogue, not just between ourselves, but also with the Western world. And so there are a lot of, numerous genres of expression. Somebody like Asta Devu, who was here the other night, he takes off from Kathak, or he takes off from Kathakali, or he's inspired by Manipuri Thangka, whatever it is. He's basically a modern dancer trained in Europe, an Indian trained in Europe, but who comes back and takes naturally from, he cannot but take from some of his own forms that are an expression of himself. And so too, I worked very, very, very closely with an Odissi dancer, Martin Mukherjee. We worked a lot together. So during our career, we did have that other thing happening, and we found a lot of things that we could dialogue about. But coming back to Bharatanatyam, let's just get down to some of the basics. I'd like to say that, we are talking about sadhana this whole conference, and again from so many people we heard the same thing about what does sadhana mean. And I'll tell you something, I'll let you into the secret that when we were contemplating this whole, even when it took us time to even reach the word sadhana for the conference, but when we had them, then we had to define it. And defining it was not easy, because in India, sadhana, I'm not going to say much about her because I have great regard for Shilpi Jayarao sitting here, who would be able to, and I'm sure will this evening, talk with much more authority on that particular word. But sadhana is so much part of our lives, and that's why we put Tangamani, who's our Ayama, who makes these beautiful, exquisite columns. And one day we just picked up that picture and said, we just had her legs, and of course you see her hand, and she's bending down and doing something that she does every single day. And that we decided was going to be our motto, our sort of motto for the festival, because for the Congress, because it defined that daily practice. And I have to say that one of the first things that you do learn as a dancer is that you cannot circumvent that daily concentrated workout. You cannot. There's no way that you can achieve any an iota of perfection in what you do unless you do it again and again. And the form is not easy. And I'll just very quickly tell you. I can't go through the whole form, but what I will tell you is a very beautiful shloka from the Abhinaya Darpanam, which a small treatise of ours, which we follow like a little Bible. And in the Abhinaya Darpanam, it says, what is it that a man can do with his body? And it says, Mandalot Plavane Chaiva Brahmari Pada Charika Chaturdha Pada Vedasyu Stesham Lakshana Muchyate. It says you can only do these, whether you're a sportsman, where you can, of course now sports has reached such a dimension, people are flying with a pair of skis on. So it's without aid. If you had no aids, what is it that you could do? You could mandala, you could take posture, you could take position. You're sitting differently, but you're sitting. Somebody might decide to lie down. This is posture. I'm standing now in a posture called Sthanakam. Sthanakam is a posture where in Bharatanatyam we do not deflect weight. We do not take weight off the 2 feet. We stand. Many other, my colleagues in other forms say, what a boring dance form. Because everything is very square. That's what they say, we're very square. It's true. Our sitting posture is again with weight not on one or another leg, but actually on both, or actually in the center, between the two. The third posture again would be absolutely straight. I couldn't deflect weight, and if you do it in this, then you have things happening which immediately start smacking or being slightly risky, and that's what this style is not. It isn't. It's not fussy. It's a very one of the main hand positions is Natya Ramle, which literally means the beginning of dance. Again, it has no. It looks easy. It's not so easy to hold that. It's a very beautiful line. It does not raise shoulder. It does not drop elbow. It has extension, yet it has some, warmth. So Natya Ramle is one basic one. Now, what does this person say? Mandalo, Plavane, actually one or two other postures. Let's say if you looked at Indian sculpture, you'll often see this. Krishna, this is the swastika position, so a lot of the sculpture shows Krishna in this position, or in an Narmandi position. There are many ways. Or you see Vishnu. In a, he dies upon the oceans, yes. And then you have, of course, the very famous Nataraja positions, where again looks easy enough. You see so many of these sculptures and you think, I can do that. But it's not easy. The Nataraja position is perhaps the most difficult to do, especially well. All full of meaning, and that requires another, and with various positions. It requires a whole session by itself. So, Mandala. Utpravanam. Utpravanam means to be able to rise into the sky, and so we have many of our let's say our vocabulary is made up of postures, made up of utpravanas, jumps, which is a typical Bharatanatyam jump, either to the side or forward. Brahmari. Brahmari is to be able to turn around your axis. So, Brahmari, Padachari. Padachari means to just literally walk or move. This is of course done in various ways, and numerous, of course. My guru was one of the master craftsmen of creating new ways of walking, and depending on the character she chose, she had the most graceful or most bold walks. That she choreographed nearly 25 full-length dance dramas, and she had many characters in them, including everybody from the Ramayana. So she had different gaits. And so what they're saying, but in dance, what does this mean? Not just manners of walking, it means your actual steps, your actual footwork. Let me show you some of the mandalas of Bharatanatyam. What does this form look like? As I said, Sthanaka, Chayata, which is a half-sitting posture, Leadham. We use this very with great finesse when we divide the body up into where the lower half beats out the beat and where the top half is actually emoting. It's one of the most beautiful things about this particular style. If I was going in a Chatushra, which is a 4-beat time cycle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And I could be saying, you all have come here, and that gives me so much joy. So to divide the body up and to be able to think, or to where the lower half of the body was described in many different texts as being that part of the body that beats out rhythm, that part of the body which moves you, but not part of the emotional self. It's more a part that has needs, both sexual or otherwise, and therefore the modern dance forms, we find them sometimes a little ugly, and that's because actually it's strange. All modern, both in our Indian films or anywhere in the world, it's the lower half of the body that is being used extensively now. It's a very strange thing. And in our art forms, classical forms, that isn't the part of the body that just holds you or moves you, but it doesn't take predominance over that area which is part of the emotions, and that area or above, which is part of your aspirations. So again, I say that's why I say that philosophy is vital. You have to have a philosophy. So these different, so we have, then we have Preritam, which is a slightly wider position. We have Prenkanams, where you're sitting on one foot and extending another. It could be this way, it could be with a toe down position or a heel down position, as I showed you earlier. It could be forward, it could be backwards. Then we have positions on the floor, either like this, or one knee down, or a jump and one knee down. Things like this, but you see that the form is very balanced. It's almost geometric. It is geometric. And within this geometry is another whole philosophy, because there are triangles within squares, there are circles within triangles, and then you come to the whole philosophy of the Sri Chakra and so many other wonderful things where again I'm not an authority, but I try to think that within this is the mystery of life. Within these postures, you can brush it aside as just being another posture, but you know that all of us, when we look at a child who's sort of sitting quietly in a corner, you can immediately judge whether they're upset or they're happy or they're just comfortable or they're lazy. You immediately get a sense. So posture is not to be brushed aside. A posture is an expression of who you are and what you're doing. Mandala Uttra. Let me show you some of the steps in Bharatanatyam. We have some very nice dancers here. Come to that. You can't sit down when an old lady is breathing heavily. Take that out. Take this out. Okay, come. These are our junior students. This is Abhijit. I didn't know that we are. Come on, let us see you do a couple of articles. Come. So now, I'll show you how, for instance, they begin to use these mandalas, but you'll see other things beginning to happen. When a child first comes to us, all they learn is to beat these legs. And the teacher is saying, hey, hey, yeah, the child is thinking after the first month has passed. Is this what I came to do? My knees are paining. I'm so tired, as they say, some of them. I'm so tired. But basically they're wondering when am I going to do those wonderful things that they do on TV, you know? Use your hands and use your expressions. This goes on till you're almost sick of it. And basically because teachers have to learn to adapt to newer methods. But this was the old way. And the idea was to bring your balance to the center and for you to understand what it takes to actually just do that so easily. It's not easy at all. It's a very tough position, especially with a plie like this. And to be able to this is easier. There's no stress on me because I'm moving my weight. But if I did this, then you're holding yourself very comfortable, but there's a lot of wrist turning up exactly. So from that little thing, they start doing very soon a little adabu called, a little unit called an adabu, which is something like this. You show the fifth one, you show the seventh one, Inga. Seven? Yes? Dalam. Now you're noticing that when they first learned it, it wasn't quite so expert. Which year? Second year, okay, so that they've come to that point, but they're actually looking. The beginning, just coordinating that hand-body action, foot action, is very tough. But what happens after a while, we come to an old and a very nice saying which I'd like to share with you. And which we say to the children from the time they come. Because as soon as they start doing these adabas, for instance, he used a prenkanam in front, you used a prenkanam in the side, and show what you did with your hands. Start it from here and then go. Okay, so one person is opening out and forming this beautiful diagonal line. He's going forward and almost touching the ground. So the Abhinay Darpanam says, Yato hasta, yato drishti, yato drishti, tato manaha, yato manas, tato bhava, yato bhavo, tato rasaha. This very simple saying, it's like saying to a child, when you talk to me, please look at me. I heard that so often when I was a kid. My father was in the services, and when he thought I was lying, then he said, "You never look at me when you're saying the truth." And that was true. We never looked at our parents in the eyes and it's the same in art. If you're talking to somebody honestly, you have to look at what your the lines of your movements must be what you are addressing. So it says yato hasta tato drishti, where your hand is, please look in that direction. Don't look somewhere else and talk to somebody here. So if the hands are going with this beautiful following of me, we're talking about sadhana here because you have to make it a point to, so what does it say next? And that's important, that's what sadhana is. Yato hasta tato drishti. Once again, yato hasta tato drishti, yato drishti tato manaha. If I'm talking to you, my mind must be with you, my concentration must be with you. So it's not just sending the hand there and thinking about, oh, I'm just dying for that 4 o'clock lecture. Can't be, just can't be. At this point, I have to be with you. Not only with you, but with myself. And so, that opening is pain. So he must get that wonderful line, strike the leg, turn, now address the other hand, full stretch, then do what he was doing, look down, enjoy the movement, and this, and then it says, if your manas is there, if your heart is there, surely expression follows. You don't have to, that's the difference between mind and bhava. Bhava is not mind. Mind is a skill. It's a skill. A juggler also is very skilled. definition that I have heard yet. When somebody said to her, what is this thing called bhava? And because bhava and rasa are not things that you can understand easily. It's easier said than done. But then you, after 15 years in the field, you say, what is this thing called expression? What is bhava? Why is it not just expression? And she said, it's the outward expression of an inner feeling. She said, bhava has to be. The inner feeling flows out. I want to talk to you, and so I come towards you. And I want to do it. Expression is formed. It's not, it doesn't work the other way. There is skill, there's no doubt about it. All of us dancers have skill. We have, and I'm going to get into that area of skill in terms of expression. But we'll do a few more of these others, and then I'd like to talk about that. Do a very fast one. Now here's a very nice step where I love these steps. When I teach children, then I try to think of things that I want them to be expressive in their nritta, and then I think of things which my gurus never said to me. They were so severe. I must say, there are two ways of learning in India, I think. In my time, when I was a child, now as a teacher, now as somebody who has looked upon teaching with great affection, I now think that the way we learned was never question. I never questioned maybe for 12 years. Never questioned. But you, like a sponge, you just allow the water to be poured into you, and you're so full, and the Gita's Chakravansa's class. Who was here when we had Chakravansa's Gita classes every Wednesday? He was going above us and all. And he would say, doesn't matter if you don't understand. And he'd have these very great ones sitting in front of him, and all of us bachas right next to him, all of 10 and 12 with our little Gita open. And Aniverson's translation itself was tough, but on top of that, his remarks, his explanations. But he never said to us, you're too small to learn the Bhagavad Gita. Never. He said, I hope you're coming there on Wednesday. And that was it. If he said we would be coming, we were there. And then we'd sit through this thing and nothing would. But today when I pick up the Gita, I remember everything he said to us about the Gita. So it's two ways of learning. He just poured it on us. And I know, when you come to India, you think, there's so much information, I can't take it. I wish they'd say it simply. I know, I've heard that remark said. And it's true, that's the way we feel too. It's just, your theory teacher, and then your Vedic hereditary, and your temple architecture, and then your music, and everything's coming at you in the Sanskrit, in the languages. And you're saying, is this what was, I thought I was going to dance. But the other way is the way we do it now, where we almost feel everything open for the child and say, have this banana now. And then they say, I don't like it. I don't know what the answer is. As a teacher who's taught for over 30 years, I'm really not sure, but I think it's somewhere in between the two. Sometimes I say to them, don't ask it, just do it. Or just listen, That's sometimes my instinct is to say, don't, because if you don't silence yourself, you can't hear, you don't hear the nuances, you don't see, they're showing it to you, but you're not looking. So many times I've shown these, I've said something to people or I've shown them something, they're not looking, they're behind you. They say, yes, Akka. Then and they're not watching. They're behind you. So there's this thing of looking and grasping. That is something that a student must be responsible for. That's not the guru's, would you agree with me? That's not the guru's job. The child must learn to concentrate. But drawing them in is your job. And of course that's the challenge of the teacher. So we have this body of beautiful movements, and I'm going to show you one nice little movement which emphasizes, as soon as you start getting into movement in India, in any dance form, you start having to conform to some of the rules and regulations of what we call kala. There is such a thing as a pala. It binds, it's the reins that you pull the horse back with, just simply walk, or it can trot, or it can canter, it can gallop, but the decision to hold it back is taken by the pace and the leg of the pala. It won't go into it, it's another whole science in itself. But very simply to say that when you come to that, one simple take off of that is emphasis of either the sum, as we call it. When I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, this is playing with the sum. And the offbeat would be 1, 2, 4, 6, 7. And you have a little step that when you see the little children do, it's like, bubbles floating up in the sky. I really feel that. It's a very simple step, but the offbeat takes precedent over the sum. It's something like this when it's in the Madhya lab. Tick, 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 tick. It seems very simple. It's an emphasis on the offbeat, very difficult with the feet. But when little children do it, they're struggling with this offbeat. But the mudras are turning on the sum. It's 1. So there's, before they know how they got into it, you find that they're doing a wonderful thing, most amazing thing. They're playing with the offbeat again in the lower half of the body and with the 1s and 3s on the top. And it has this feeling of no beat being empty, And I love that thing, especially when it's done fast. So, I have about 15 minutes. Let's do something which we can all participate in, and that is this whole wonderful world of gesture. You know that we've already used a couple of mudras here, and so I'm going to recite single hand gestures. I'd love you to try them. So, put up one hand or both hands, I don't mind. Let's just try this thing. And in Kalakshetra we learned them. As they learned them, I don't know, maybe many hundreds of years ago. Beautiful, it's recited, we don't write anything down. As children we learn them, and then it just stays. We don't forget the shloka. Okay, so. Patakas tripatako ardhapataka kartavi mukhaha mayurakhyo Adhachandrascha arala shukatundakaha mushdishcha shikarakyascha kapitha kataka mukhaha suchi chandrakala padmakosha sarpashirastatha mrigashisha simhamukhaha tangulascha alpadmataha chaturu ramaraschaiva hamsasyo hamsapakshakaha sandhamsho mukulaschaiva tamrachura trishulakaha. Very nice, thanks. Yes, it's a little like that. So we have these single hand gestures, and like all of us, they just have a name and you really don't know what the power of that mudra is. When you first name the name, Pataka. Pataka means a flag. So yes, you can show a flag. But now I'm going to do a couple of things which I'm sure you know what I'm doing. Unless my Abhidhan is so poor. For instance, I did this. Or I did this. A slight variation. What would the difference? And this is now the audience and Rasika must make some effort. Must make some effort. So it's not going to be so easy when it gets complex. For instance, I did this. I could put more. This would be the C. Many kids ask, why is this not the C? This is the river simply because it emanates from the mountain and it goes down to the. I have only two hands, so we have to do something that defines these things. But suppose I did something a little more subtle. For instance, let's talk a little about the power of the mudra. These mudras, I remember my father once saying to me, if you point at a dog, it's liable that you lose that finger. But if you put your palm out to it, it's not so likely. And that's the same in human behavior. If I said you said, it's far more injurious than if I said you said. Even if I was mad, even if I was really angry, but I said you said, it wouldn't be quite as bad as if you said. You said it, I know you said it. So that's as so in dance, this word, there's so many things about art and on stage. Auchityam is one of the words that I would use. And that is propriety. What is the right thing to do on stage? This would be the same with your choice of words in life. We've all gone through that period where we said something and then want to take it back, but there's no time, it's been said, your best friend is hurt, your beloved has decided I don't know what to do with you. This is true. It's because if you cannot stop it, you cannot say. And with mudras also on stage, a dancer or an artist or an actor can use his sense of auchityam, of propriety. In Tamil Nadu we have a word that is adakam. For instance, even in just the standing posture, the first posture in Bharatanatyam I showed you was Thanaka with a Natya Rambe. And this is how they start their first dance called Alarimu. That one. Now, you'll ask, that's simple enough. I went to an Arangetram once of a young girl, and the very next morning, to my horror, very next morning at 7:30, her parents and she came to my house to ask me how it was. Oh my God, I was so horrified. Nobody wants to tell an 18-year-old, how good or bad an Arangetram is. So I said, no, your guru will advise you and just go, continue working hard. No. I wanted to know what I thought and my opinion mattered. Now, I didn't say what I thought, but I'll tell you one thing that put me off immediately as I went to the Arangetram. This posture. When body language was such that when she came out for the side, I understand nerves, young person, first program, but she had also been taught wrong. She hadn't been taught what Adakam means. So the posture was, very upfront. It was also a little back. It didn't have that, I don't know, how do you express these? How do you explain what is nice about the posture? You have to know that it's nice. And this little leaning into the thing to show that your utsaha, we use that word, put on the lights. You have to be enthusiastic about what you're doing. You cannot come on stage and I've done 500 shows, I'm not really interested in this, I've been paid this huge amount of money. Okay, I'm so good at this. That's not an attitude. It has to be this. You have to have concentration, the ability to go within, the ability to say, I want to be here. This is what I love doing. And I'd like you to come into this world that I'm. That utsaha is something that we also look for in sadhana, is that you have to want to do that kolam every day. You have to want to make that barat every day for your faith or that whatever it is. There's so much of what you'd like to do. That utsaha is the love that must go in to make it a better expression. So with these mudras, let us say that I was talking with that same patakam as a king. I could say, I could also also slightly rough, but I could also say, wait, I'll talk to you, just a minute. It's a very subtle difference. Or suppose I had to decide on a mudra, if, for instance, I'll show you. There are many ways of saying you in India. We say tu, tum, aap. You know, there are gradations. So with a friend, I could say, you said, it's okay if it's to the friend. But if I was speaking to an elder, no way. I'd have to say, you said. Suppose I was addressing God. In many of our places, we address the deity or the guru. Then it would be, so much time, so much patience to say you. Suppose I had to say come, and I was somewhat in a position of authority. I could say. But I suppose I was calling the beloved, and there were many people. You know, we all talk about these wonderful poems. There are beautiful poems, in fact, they're attributed to Shankaracharya himself, where he wrote some poems about the fragility of love. And one of the poems, it says that in a crowded place, he just had to look at me and I knew what he was saying from across the hall. Such was our love. And he talks about, of course, how later he passed by and I don't even know who he is. But suppose I was calling the beloved then. I couldn't do something quite as expansive as that. So there are beautiful mudras here. So you have to decide, it's up to the artist to decide which of these you might use or not use. And it makes all the difference between, so that choice is yours. That's where the creativity is. You learn, yes you do learn items, we tell you how to do it. But your choices will be the ones that will matter. That's what will make you different from somebody else. Is your choice of items, your choice of sahitya, your choice of pieces. Let's do something with these mudras now. I'll tell you how a child builds up on these mudras. For instance, suppose I took that mudra which we don't like too much, Suji. Actually it's a great mudra. It has, in fact, so many beautiful things in it, very philosophical. It says, Eka Thevi Parabrahma. That one mudra says one. It says literally the thing of one night. One moonlit night. You can say to your beloved. But it also says Parabrahma. Bhavanaya Shate Picha. It also means Shatam. It also means 100. Then you're thinking as a student, oh my God, 1 and 100. How do I do this? Obviously, you have to then use your, your expressive powers. So you say, that has to be. What does it say after that? Bhavanayam Sudhikcha. Ravaur, the sun. Nagaryam. Nagar is the city. Nagaryam. Luki. The universe. It means when you say to somebody, yes, that's it. In Sanskrit, tatha. This or that. Huh? Vijanarthe. Vijanarthe means when I let's say in a padam, I say that I was all alone. I arrived at the river bank. Krishna wasn't there. So then that's Vijanarthe. It's funny because it means one and it means many and all those mudras. But when you say I'm alone, then you have to use the same mudra and twist it around without changing the word actually. There was no one. So it's really not to do with, ultimately you realize in the journey it's not to do with the word. It's how you use it. It's how you say it. What can we do to say a few things now? Would you like to try this? Okay, so we build up little sentences. Let's suppose I will say a very typical sentence from a padam. O Sakhi, O friend, my Lord promised that he would come, but alas, so this now, if you ask me, do I know what mudras I'm going to use? No. It has to ultimately evolve from that bank of words that you have, bank of mudras that you have. Just as you speak, you don't really think about which word you're going to use. Sometimes you think about it, but mostly it has to come from instinct, from your mood, and from your preparation for that particular moment, for that particular. It's a beautiful world of, and I'm going to read one sentence to you before I stop, because I believe this is to be interactive. Something nice Rukmini Devi wrote, and I will stop with that. She said, a true creative genius is not that which produces a work of art for the onlooker, but does so for the fulfillment of the unconquerable inspiration that comes from within. And then she says, through the contemplation of beauty and by continually surrounding ourselves with all that is beautiful, do we ourselves reflect, even unconsciously, something of the fragrance of divine grace. In ancient India, art had a high position of divine grace. Can we take some questions? I know this is not enough time, but can we just... Yes.
In today's time where the entire form is so reverence and an internal journey to oneself with divinity, as do you find it difficult to evoke these emotions in today's?
Yes, it is difficult. It is difficult. We face the same trials and tribulations that you do. We still have to look after family. We still have to manage institutions, old mothers, whatever. Every one of us does have. Dancers have very they're really under a lot of pressure because of the very thing that you're saying. There is a world out there that is going in another direction. It doesn't mean that we can't be contemplative.
No, not about contemplation, it's about this expression.
The art form doesn't. It's not intrinsic. It's intrinsic to the form.
Yeah.
How can I say it? You mostly will not see art, Bharatanatyam performed always with a sense of the words of use of divinity, inwardness, all the things that I was trying to draw your attention to. It isn't normally performed there. It's a form that lends itself to a lot of, it's being stretched now across the universe. Wherever we have people who are performing it, it's doing everything that you can think it's possible to do. It's a very avant-garde form. It's a very progressive form. I myself have done a work called Sadhana, which is extremely, it stretches the form. My guru stretched the form enormously from what she received from her gurus. Everybody, young man here called Krishna produced a drama called Masquerade, The Man in the Iron Mask, Alexander Dumas' work, and he just turned it on its head. So Bharatanatyam is doing many things. But if you like, I said in the beginning that I think my interest at this age, now that I have some real or not, is that I'm through with performing for performing's sake. I think you have to, it's important for me to make it internal and to enjoy it in a way that is special. Spanda is something I worked on in the tail end of my career in Delhi, where I basically found that I was landed with students who were not interested in performance. Very unusual situation. had come from Rishi Valley, from schools with alternative education, I somehow drew to myself people who were slightly kids who were slightly more contemplative, if you like. And the strange thing was that none of them want to be performers because they were put off by what some of my colleagues defined as being the dancer of our time. Very upfront, very personality-based kind of. Where almost you go to see the person. You say, I want to see Leela Salmon. You don't say, I want to see Dr. The person can't sit on the form like that so strongly that you don't see the form and you only see the person. I remember when I was a young dancer and just starting out my career, we wanted to see Yami because she was such a spectacular. It was such a spectacular thing to see her. She was went out from Kalakshetra, very different, and I think that was wrong. Coming to think of it, but down the line I realized that it was not right to be so dominant on a form that you don't see the form. You don't care whether it's Kuchipudi or Bharatanatyam. You just want to see, yeah. So and that I think you've got to take the ego back a little and let the form speak and let people enjoy that the Sahitya and that beautiful music and that the movements and let them. You happen to be the vehicle. That's it. And that's what my guru aimed at. And in Spanda I tried to do that. But these kids who were wonderful dancers, I found so much potential in them. And I was saying, go for it. And they were saying, no, we do not want to dance. Not this glamorous thing. So then I started creating work that we did things like Akash, we did items like traditional things, which were, we went back to the Vedic time, we left the Nayaka Nayaki Bhav, I haven't talked about that whole thing. The premise is also difficult for young people, always talking about, that's also because they misinterpret the Nayaka. The Nayaka is not a woman. The Nayaka is the Jivatma. You have to be able to think out of the box, but because there's so much to do with a womanly expression, they were almost embarrassed by it and said, this is not us. So then I said, okay, then let's deal with space. Would you like to do that? And I found that they said yes, which is a much more difficult thing to do. To describe space in movement is not at all easy. But they preferred that, and we worked very hard at that, and we did it through form. We went back to Vedic expressions, things that I took from larger texts, more ancient texts. But,
you said there are 7 main forms of dance.
Yes.
Are we likely to eliminate them?
Straight away the southern forms are Kerala has both Kathakali and Kudiyattam. Kudiyattam has now been declared by UNESCO as one of the protected forms. We have in Andhra Pradesh, we have Kuchipudi of course, we have Yakshagana as well, but in Tamil Nadu and Karnataka we have Bharatanatyam, we have in Orissa, we have Kathak in most of the northern belt, to Manipuri. Kshatriya is now fighting for a space on the map. There are hosts of forms, some of them are classical, some are not quite classical, but I don't know, I'm not an authority on the definition of what is classical, but I'd say that we have enough that we should be very, very proud of it. I think we are. And what is wonderful, and I have to say this, is that I every day thank the powers that our children are not turning their backs on these art forms and on these crafts and on these, they really are learning it with their dedication that is exemplary. When we came to schools like Kalakshetra, it was choice that sometimes the parents make for you, mother's dream being lived out, Papa had nowhere else to put you, I don't know, many things, but not the child's drive. And now all these young people, they come because they're really driven by the desire to learn Bharatanatyam, to believe in it, they study very hard, they're into Indiology and all the things that make it tick. And I think that's a big positive for me. All the things, everybody likes to say, oh, the cinema has completely, Shamak Dabar is, it's there, it's strong, it'll always be something that you need to work on, and I think it has its place.
I would like to know what would be the last age to start learning?
Yeah,
19 or 19.
19. driven by a social need or urge. They're going into old age homes, they're going into hospices and helping elderly people express themselves through these mudras. They're bedridden, they can't move. I know young people who are doing this work, and I sometimes think, why would they need to do such a long course in Bharatanatyam to do this kind of thing? And yet I think it's not that. If you can use your hands to express yourself at times when somebody cannot speak, it's just so, like you asked me, how do you show flow? If we work with spastic children and the smile that erupts on their faces, they think they're holding Alabama, but it's just the spreading of the fingers and what when they feel that there's a flower. These are things that are good because a word is not as expressive as when it emerges from your fingers. Types of flowers, there are many little, there are the little ones, there are the bunches, but normally a flower. Of course, if there's a flower, then there are bees.
Beyond that,
Beyond Bhava, Rasa. I didn't go there because really Rasa is again, it's one difficult reason. But let's try and deal with Rasa. Basically, if two of us are talking, and there's great feeling in what we're saying to each other, and we're genuinely looking at each other, and we're both connected, then some bond gets created between you and me, where I energize you in some way, and you're energizing me in some way, and it causes a chain in something. You can look at rasa as means something like that, very simply. But rasa actually means the essence of it. It's the tasting of the essence of a particular thing. So if I showed that lotus and I showed the bees, the smell, and you had a feel of what that was, then it could be that we're in a sense. And it need not be the same thing. For instance, if I was in a very tragic scene on stage, I remember when I did the role of Shakuntala, I wrongly permitted myself a tear dropping from my eye. That wonderful scene in court when she goes back and he doesn't recognize Shakuntala. I don't know whether you know the story. Dushyanta fails to recognize Shakuntala and she's so angry with him. And in that dialogue which I did, we do the play in Sanskrit. I allowed her to fall, and later my guru called me and reprimanded me for that, and she said, never do that again. And I learned such a great lesson that day. What she said is that ultimately it is an art form, and you must only express yourself and no more. And then, when you watch it, you could be enjoying it. You could be enjoying my tragedy. So it doesn't mean that you become remorse yourself. So rasa is a difficult concept in dance. It's not that we react exactly. It could be contrary. You could be mad at this villain. You could be afraid when actually there is no fear there. So there are various reactions. But the enjoyment of that moment, or the enjoyment of that scene, is what I could say very simply is rasa. Again, Jayarajji will be able to. I had put aside an item to do it, but I'm not going to do it because we're late and I think we should stop. Not 4 o'clock, 3:15. No, please. 4 o'clock is here. No, we'll skip that. I'll put in the Palladi. I'm going to do a very small part of a bhajan. This bhajan is actually it's a lovely moment where a very young Radha says to Shri Krishna, play your flute for me, and as you play your flute, may I sing along with you. And then she gets a naughty idea and she says, why can't I be Krishna just once? So she asks for all the things, his Pitambaravastra and his Mukut and all his peacock feathers. And she says, you take my bindi and you take my churiya and you take my conversation and let me be the king of this castle for once. Let me stop you on your way when you are going to sell carry the butter, when you are going to with your the water on your head. And in this very simple exchange, and again I'm not philosophizing, very, very small to be saying this to you, but actually I think that this bhajan, although it's a little conversation between two little children, what it actually, when it is like a little child wanting to put his foot into his father's shoe and walking about, struggling but wanting to be in those shoes. It's that Advaitam that comes of wanting to be so much part of somebody else that you become like this. And so Radha is actually asking to be, not to be treated as separate from him, but they were actually one. I'll try. I haven't worked on this for a while. the organization. And these pieces are long. Another time, another day.
Thank you.